Minimalists.
Why do we cling to unhappy relationships, and how do we let go of them?
Oh boy.
I'm like the king of clinging to unhappy relationships. I mean, not so much anymore, but like back in the day, I just like it. There's a sense of security. There's a sense of knowing the outcome. So even though it's a pernicious relationship I would have, at least I knew what was going to happen. So there's all these like, you feel like you have a little bit of control because you know the outcome. You feel secure because you don't, you're not going to be throwing things that you don't know of. Even if they're negative things that get thrown your way, at least you know they're coming. So I think that's a big piece of it. And then, there's that comfortable aspect to it, right?
Well, they always say the hell you know is better than the heaven you don't.
Amen.
So with my parents, the way I grew up, my mother, bless her heart, but she had a lot of food issues, rageaholic, and my father was very much of an enabler and the kindest, most humblest guy. But so I always was like, well, that's why I have the relationships and the marriages and thank God the divorces I have. But I was recreating that because it felt familiar. So I was like, well, at least I know mom and dad stayed together for 60 something years. So this can't be that bad. And I think it's just familiarity and the fear to create something new. Like it's really, really uncomfortable to have different types of friendships where, get this, they're equal.
Oh, man.
I would be always paying for everything, be the caretaker, all my friends. Nobody takes out a credit card. No, it's Lisa's, everything's on me. And then it's like, oh, God, no one, this is what my biggest pride after COVID. Because of COVID, thankfully, the only one good thing that happened for me was everybody in my life needs me and I need them versus them just needing me. Yeah. And of course, the goal is to not have a need at all, but for now it's progress. Yeah. So I think it's just recreating that childhood stuff for me. It always was.
I still fight that. Like I had a friend make fun of me one time. Like we go out to this little diner. It was in Missoula, Montana. It's a cheap place. I was like, oh, don't worry guys, I got it. And she was like, okay, mister, I'll get everything.
Yes.
And like, I didn't realize how some people just want to pay for their own meal, but like there is something, I have a lot of like starving artist friends. So I try to like contribute as much as I can to them, whether it's like buying tickets to their show or like paying for dinner when we're out and about. But yeah, it's hard for me to get past that still sometimes.
Oh, that's a rough one. I remember hearing an interview with Chelsea Handler on Stern where she was talking about, of course, I pick up the tab every time because I make the most money and I have to fight that now. And I'll tell you honestly, I said to the guys on my podcast, shameless plug, Loser with the Dream, available everywhere, that I said, look, I'm going to go to LA and do a ton of podcasts that I've had friends on, that I love, and I'm going to see all my friends. I may, when you start making money from this podcast of ours, ask you for that money back. I knew my flight was free. I mean, I live cheap now. But I may ask you for that money back just so there's never resentment. Yeah. And they, as people with day jobs, making nothing from comedy, said, you're absolutely right. Nothing is worth resenting us. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. So I had that thing where I'd have to always pull out the credit card. And this was hilarious. Once I was at a diner with a friend of mine who's a best-selling author. And as a joke, I was just spoofing Bridesmaids. I took out that platinum card, the Amex card that's really heavy, the one made of steel. And I go, oh, darling, don't worry. Everyone should see one of these once in their life. And she goes, oh, how about one of these? And she had the black card. And we laughed so hard. And I'm like, funny. But it is a thing we have to fight. Yeah. It's the good fight. People want to feel like equals, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Sarah, why do we cling to unhappy relationships? There's a few things to understand here. The first off is that it's not the relationship, meaning the other person, that is making you happy. There's also not this thing called a relationship, a separate thing. There's you and there's the other person. And when you come together, we call it a relationship. The other person is not making you unhappy. You and your expectations of the other person are making you unhappy. And so understanding that it's only an unhappy relationship because you want one thing out of it, but you're getting something else out of the relationship. So how do you let it go? There is no how. There's simply an understanding. Letting go is not something you do. It's something you stop doing. The only way to let go is to stop clinging to a relationship. Now, maybe this is a toxic relationship for you. Maybe it's something that you are clinging to even though you know that it's never going to bring you what you want. Instead of calling it unhappy, let's call it what it is. It's a relationship that's making you miserable. There's two ways to change that. The first way to change it is to understand that my expectations are what's making me miserable. The second way to change it is to understand that that misery is going to be there in any relationship for which you have an expectation. Now, you can have a high standard. A high standard simply means living in the moment, doing the best you can, putting the best foot forward. The expectation means I need to get something out of it. So the reason you're clinging right now is because you feel like you need to have this relationship and you need to get satisfaction or happiness or whatever. Those things are not external. They can't be pursued. A relationship can never make you happy. Only you can make you happy.
Man, I love that. You know what
Preach.
what I love about this podcast? He lets us take a little shot at trying it.
Yeah.
He lets us try to answer. Then he knows.
That's right, exactly.
He's like, I got this, bitch.
Right, yeah.
Don't worry. Let me pretend these two have anything to say. It's fantastic.
Story of my
No,
life.
but that's so true, man. That's really
Don't worry,
profound.
Sean will just edit you out in post. It's fine.
I figure my mic has never been on this whole time.
Did you enjoy this video? If so, you can listen to full episodes of the Minimalists Private Podcast, available exclusively on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/theminimalists today. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free.